And that means the meeting is in progress, finally. So, thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for your patience as we got going. We're happy to have provided a little entertainment as we tried to get up and running. But all seems to be good. So anyway, welcome everybody. It is our goal tonight to be able to provide some transparency and information about the process of the Human Services Committee. And as you just heard, the meeting is being recorded via Zoom. I'd like to introduce the members of the committee. We have Tara O'Brien, Robin Morgan, Trevor Stannis, and Sarah Turbo, and Avery Thompson, who I believe is en route. And I'm David Miner. As a kind of an overview for this evening, what we're looking to do is we will be giving you some background on the history of how human service funding for the town has been determined, and go through the process that the committee has for making our recommendations. We have some organizations that will give a brief summary of their programs and the impact that the grants provide them, and probably more importantly, the impact that they have on the community. For the sake of time, questions will be accepted on cards. So there are Post-it notes up here. So if you have questions, if you would please write them down and your name, and you can give them to Sarah at the table. For those on Zoom, we have an email, brattleborohsc@gmail.com. So if we've actually been using that simply for this program. And we do know that it's up and running because we've had some questions and comments coming through. So again, please use that. Again, it's Brattleboro HSC Human Services Committee @gmail.com. So let me turn it over to Robin and for an introduction as to what we're doing.
I'm just going to give kind of an overview of what we're discussing tonight. The human services allocation represents all human services expenditures by the town. And since we live in a small town, we don't have the infrastructure to provide a lot of these services directly. So, for instance, a Department of Homeless Services or Department of Housing. Instead, we rely on our community partner organizations to fill those needs. And it's easy to imagine what kind of impact it would have on our town if we did not have these service providers giving all these different types of support to our community members. So given that, we believe that this funding is absolutely essential for Brattleboro. As we go through our meeting tonight and people are thinking about, what is the cost of providing these services, we got a few numbers from the town manager's office to give people to keep in mind. Now, they asked us to give a disclaimer that these are estimates because they can't figure out the exact figure until they have the updated grand list, which won't happen, I think, until sometime in the late spring, like June. So this is a ballpark figure, but it's more or less what we can expect to be paying. So based on their determinations for this allocation that was decided by last year's RTM that we would spend $461,276 on human services this year, that translates to $37.90 per $100,000 of assessed home value. So in Brattleboro, the median home value is $183,100. So for that median value home, it would be more like $69.39 per year. So that's the individual household median tax burden to pay for all of these services. So just want people to keep that number in mind as we're discussing tonight, $69.39. And that is something that we think about a lot as a committee. You know, we live here too, we're taxpayers, we're renters, and we're impacted by rising tax costs too. So we take our responsibility very seriously as RTM members who chose this amount of funding and as Human Service Committee members who figured out how to allocate this funding to all of the worthy organizations that are asking our town to help them out with some funding. We also understand that a lot of our neighbors rely on these services and on these organizations to provide things that the town does not provide. So that's sort of the framework that we're working within here as the Human Services Committee. Back to you, David.
So what I want to try to do is to give kind of a historical background to Human Services and how it's operated and functioned over time. We know that the Human Services Review Committee was formally organized March 23rd, 2019, with members of the committee appointed by the town moderator for fiscal year 20 and thereafter elected at a town meeting with the authority of the moderator to fill vacancies throughout. What we do know is, hey, Avery, come on up. This is Avery Thompson, another member of the committee.
Yeah, it's all good.
As soon as I couldn't get into the Zoom, I apologize. I was going to be the Zoom representative.
That's okay. You weren't able to get in anyway. So that's another story we'll update you on.
I realized that and started driving.
So I have records. So I've been on the Zoom committee for the Human Services Committee. I have Zoom on the brain. On the Human Services Committee, 15 years, 20 years. I mean, it's been a long time. And I have records that go back to 2013. So actually 2012 for fiscal year 2013. We know that the committee went beyond that, and I think that we've all heard from members of RTM who've been associated with RTM for longer than I have about the importance of the Human Services Committee and to the process. Prior to the formation of the committee, grant requests were presented to RTM as individual articles. The discussion will go on for an extended period, as these folks talked about, with people arguing for their pet projects. Members do not have the opportunity to extensively review the application. And so RTM decided then to form the Human Services Committee that would centralize the application process, the review process, and the recommendation process, and to take the pressure off of RTM so that they could focus on, not saying that this is not important, but really attend to a number of other of the items of the meeting, because I guess this was taking up a lot of the time. So they did that. And, I think as we walk through, I think it's actually, it has proven effective. The number that we provide is a recommendation to RTM, and it has been over time. So that RTM then would vote for, to pass it. I think historically what happened is that there were attempts then to kind of have a line item veto. But I think that was, again, discussed and accepted that you would look at it from a kind of a whole presentation as opposed to going the line item, because you're just back to looking at individual reviews again. So you know, that is kind of a background to what we do. So to talk about the funding recommendation process, turn it over to Robin.
Okay, so I'm just gonna spend a few minutes explaining how do we figure out how much money that we're gonna recommend for each organization that applies. So currently, the process is that in the fall, the applications are put up online and there's extensive instructions. And I think that usually the town manager's office sends out to orgs that have applied in the past to say, here, the new applications are ready. Do you want to apply? And that in documentation and application info that they need is available on the town's website. And committee members are required to navigate conflicts of interest. So any organization that a committee member has a relationship with, whether it's they're employed there, they volunteer there, their family members are employed or volunteer there, they would recuse themselves from participating in a discussion of how much or whether to fund that organization. Anything that could, impact their ability to be unbiased about that consideration. So the committee looks at the applications and focuses on how they meet the issues of need in the community, including, but not limited to, food security, housing stability, disability support, recovery and harm reduction relating to addiction, senior and youth health and well-being, BIPOC and LGBTQ support and safety, financial support during hardship, veteran services, environmental sustainability, mental health, well-being of immigrants and refugees, and any other services that address the pressing needs of Brattleboro residents. So once we receive all these applications, because it's a lot of content, with this year, I think we had around 1,200 pages of applications. It's kind of like a group project in school. We divide up the applications. Everybody gets assigned certain ones that they are in charge of really diving deep into and then giving a presentation about to the rest of the committee. So over our many meetings that we have throughout the fall, we work through and that committee member who's assigned presents the applications that they really researched really deeply, and other committee members can ask questions, but we're not yet discussing how much money should we give. We're just getting to understand the application and what each org said they were going to use the money for and who that's going to serve and how that's impacting our community. So after we've gone through all of these presentations, then comes the scoring. So we use a rubric that's also available online or here, that's right. Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, we have printouts of all of these materials if anybody wants to take a look at what's on it. And so we give a numerical score to different areas of the application and then use that to make a total score for each committee member for each application that they are not recused from. So the areas that we score them are based on their financial management and oversight, their organizational structure, to what degree do they effectively impact the population that they're seeking to serve, and to what degree does the organization monitor and respond to the needs in the community, and within, how do they fit in with the sort of organizational ecosystem within Brattleboro of all the different organizations that are working to provide support and might be collaborating or trying to not duplicate services that another organization is doing. And then the third area that we're scoring them in is who is served in the community by this. So to what degree is this organization serving our community? How many Brattleboro residents? What percentage is that of the total number of people that they serve? And so we give them a 0 to 5 score in each of those 3 areas so that their total score is going to be between 0 and 15. And then once all of the committee members have scored all the applications, we kind of put these numbers into a big spreadsheet and see and discuss like, oh, here's why I scored that organization this much. Here's why I scored that much. And so through discussion, we might even adjust our scores a little bit more once we realize, oh, that's meeting a need I didn't realize. And so we have a discussion, we get to our final scores, and then we use that final score average between how many people scored each organization, which isn't always the same number of people, because some organizations might have everyone voting on it. Some might only have 4 members voting on it because some of the people recused themselves. So we average it out by how many people voted. And then we kind of use that as a basis to decide who are we going to fund for as much as we can manage, who are we going to give a partial amount to, and who do we feel like it's not appropriate to give funding from the town at this time. Yeah, and then we added a new step this year, which is for organizations who we are declining their request for funding totally, we reach out to them and let them know that, so that it's not like a surprise when the allocation is published. Back to you, David.
Thank you. And also too, we use that as an opportunity for the organizations that we did not provide any funds for, to come in and meet with the committee so we could talk with them. Back to history. So taking a look at the allocation budget over the years, prior to fiscal year 22, there was no predetermined budget that had been established. The committee would put together a list of recommendations and make a presentation to the select board. We didn't really have anything to kind of go with, but historically what we had done previously. And so, we would come up with a number. Recommendations would be made, about the amount granted. The select board would push back a little bit. And because what they wanted, so what was done is they would come up with a budget amount that would then be, presented as the overall budget. And that worked okay. There were, a couple times when there were some adjustments made by the RTM. But in fiscal year 21, there was a lengthy discussion at RTM about the amount of the grants provided. Finally, RTM provided the allocation by increasing the amount of the committee recommended by $19,151. I think based upon this discussions at that meeting, it was sensed that the system was a little broken. So the following year, fiscal year 22, the select board suggested that RTM be given a specific direction to the Human Services Committee about how much overall funding that RTM wished to provide us or to work with. And they used the figure of 1.4%. So for the first time, we as a committee actually had a budget to work with. And I can't tell you how much easier that made the process. I would think it would make it easier not only for us, because we knew what we were working with, but make it probably easier for those on the application side, because they would understand what we were working with. Now, I'm not speaking for you, but that would be my sense as to there was kind of relief on both sides.
And for the town, because then they would know how much to expect that amount of money to be.
So they use the guide as 1.4%, but they use the guide 1.4 as up to 1.4%. So we weren't required simply to fill out the 1.44%. If it was felt that applications were given that didn't meet the needs as defined, that as Robin kind of walked through, then we didn't just blindly accept the application. So the first year that it came into effect, the total request essentially equaled the amount of the budgeted allocation. The second year at 1.4%, the total request exceeded the amount of the allocation by 89,000. The third year at 1.4%, the allocation exceeded the budget amount exceeded the allocation by, the request exceeded the allocation by 108,000. So the needs were growing. And the needs of the town were, as being identified, were specifically growing. So the following year, for fiscal year 25, the allocation was increased to 2%. So there was debate at the RTM as to how much, to stick with 1.4, to go with 2, to go with something higher, and they settled on 2. So that year, actually, the total grant that came in was $48,000 less than the budget.
The requests.
The requests were less than the allocation that was available to us. So we went through, and there were some applications that we turned down. So the amount that we approved was, I don't have the exact number, but it was like maybe 80,000 or so less than what the allocation was. But again, we were using the up to amount. So now we hit the last RTM. There was discussion about increasing it. The board proposed, I think, the 1.4. There was a discussion about making it 1, and then we went back to the 1.4. And then there was discussion about making it 2, and then there was a proposal about making it 2.5, or thereabouts, and we settled on the 2%. Starting in September, it seemed as though the board and town manager at the start of every select board meeting was advertising the fact and making everyone aware that there was $480,000 out there. Go for it. And they pushed it and they pushed it. And everybody heard. So we ended up with requests totaling almost $770,000, $770,000. And what we found is, in taking a look at it, all of these organizations, 52 organizations, in fact, they were identifying that they were assisting 25,000 residents in the town. Now, we're only a town of 12,200, whatever it is. And so there were situations and scenarios where residents were having to go to multiple organizations to get their needs met. So that we had a challenge, without a doubt. And as Robin outlined, we reviewed each and every application. And when we came down to the rubric, what we did is that we took a look at we took a look at what the averages were, and then worked from there to determine how to allocate. Obviously, we had to have situations where we had to pare down requests, pare back requests, so that somebody had requested X amount, they didn't get the full X amount. Some organizations did not meet the criteria, so that we had to say no. What we found is, further, aside from the fact of the number of residents, that 51% of the proposed allocation was being requested to provide assistance for substance use and mental and physical health, housing challenges, and victim support and safety services. 30% of the money was intended for youth, elder, and disabled care, and 19% was intended for food, help with food access. You know, I think that, you know, all of those needs are paramount and important. And so, you know, that was what we're working with. The committee held meetings throughout December. We had meetings for over 35 hours reviewing and discussing the 1,200 pages, which Robin referred to. And this does not include the time spent by each individual committee member to read and understand each of the applications. So from our first meetings in September through December, you know, there was a lot going on. All meetings were warned and are open to the public. The previous few years, I might want to note, the Finance Committee had one of its members sit on each of our meetings. They did not have a vote for what we were doing, but certainly they did make suggestions and input, which was very helpful. This year, they did not have a member sit with us, although one member of the committee did attend a portion of one of our meetings. So that kind of brings us to where we are, or what we got to. And I think, Sarah?
Yeah, so we're now going to have the opportunity. Can folks on Zoom hear me okay if I'm not unmuted myself? Great. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from 6 different organizations that are poised to receive funding if RTM approves the funding. And yeah, we've asked each of these organizations to speak for 3 or 4 minutes about the impact of the funds on the services that they're able to provide people in this community, and hope to give a little bit of a breadth of understanding of the kinds of things that this funding is going towards. So I'm going to start with Hannah from the Putney Food Shelf before we get to Brattleboro, an organization that serves many Brattleboro residents, even though its name is the Putney.
Yes. I realize it's confusing, but yes, the Putney Food Shelf serves more than Putney.
Can folks hear Hannah? Yes, you're great.
So the Putney Food Shelf is open Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings, and we're open to anyone who comes for food. So, people shop anonymously, but we track what town people are coming from and the number of people in their households. So the visits from Brattleboro over the past year have doubled, and currently, even since the application, actually the numbers have gone up. And currently 33% of the people that Putney Food Shelf serves come from Brattleboro. That's actually exceeded the number of people from Putney recently, which is 29% currently. We also serve, so our main catchment area is Brattleboro, Putney, Dummerston, Westminster, and Bells Falls really, and then lots of other surrounding towns also. We do receive funds from the town of Putney, Brattleboro. We have been receiving funds from the town of Putney, Brattleboro, and Westminster. If you want to say that the process that goes on in Brattleboro, your human services funding process, is, from my perspective, the most thoughtful and thorough of all the 3 towns that we apply to, and also responsive year by year. The fact that you're being so thoughtful each year, just to say, Westminster, where you lock in, take 3 years to get your thing approved, but you're locked in at a certain rate, which is not responsive to how need shifts. And well, you know, it could be going up or down to the benefit or detriment to the town that's funding the organization, right? So I feel like this process is very responsive to the current situation. And you know, at the time of the application, we were serving 28% were coming from Brattleboro. That number actually has just shifted over the last 3 months. It's now at 33% of the people served. So that was 2,000 visits in fiscal year 2024, 2,000 visits from Brattleboro households, representing, this is a duplicated number because it is anonymous shopping. So representing 6,500 people if you count the number of people in the households. The unduplicated number that we have that we track is the number of new households. So, you know, a new household will join, we take note of that, and then they become part of the regular group quite often. So there were 80 new households in FY '24. And over the last 3 months, there have been almost 80 new households in just the last 3 months. So there's certainly an increase in the number of people from Brattleboro. Let's see. We're requesting $7,500, which is 2.8% of our operating budget. This comes to a value of $1.15. Over $1 per Brattleboro resident served. And the funds will go towards food and operational expenses. We're pretty minimal in our staffing. We have 22 full-time staff. We have an AmeriCorps member, and we have a very dedicated team of 50 or so volunteers that really make everything work in such a fair-bound way. We source food for free as much as possible. The Vermont Food Bank is the main source of food for us, some of which is free and some of which is purchased. And we do fresh rescue from farms and from Hannaford. We do purchase food to fill in the gaps though. So we want to make sure that we have nutritionally dense foods that are staple items offered regularly so that the people can rely on what's available. And also to combat the fear of scarcity, which breeds distress in the shoppers, but also breeds a sense of the more we can combat the fear of scarcity, the more people will trust that there will be enough food and take what they need for a week, which is what we say. Please take what you need for a week. So based on household size, what that might be per household, and people are able to shop each week, once a week. So we regularly purchase, each week we have a delivery of milk, we have a delivery of eggs. We also purchase wholesale staples, but on more of a monthly basis. And we make an effort to purchase diet specific and culturally relevant foods for the shoppers that come through our shelf. We are serving Afghan families from Brattleboro regularly, and we offer halal options for them. Our food costs have been increasing as they just are in general for everyone. And our food budget for fiscal year 2025 increased 63%, and it's now over $100,000. The amount of free food that we are able to source has also been decreasing, so that's from the budget, especially meat has been between what's available from the Vermont Food Bank, which is a very high cost item, but also really essential for protein source for many shoppers. Our meat budget alone is $10,000. So we see the social service agencies of Brattleboro as partners in our work, and especially Groundworks and Foodworks, as they provide services beyond what we provide. When we have, for example, a shopper who is unstably housed, we have reached out to Groundworks multiple times to help support that individual. We also supported Foodworks when they needed to take a break after that happened. We stepped in for 3 weeks to support the staff. So I think that, our work is complementary, but it's also an effort, working together. We're doing our best to meet the needs of the community, and we're aware that it's not even enough, really. We wish we were open more hours. We wish we had more food. We know that that's a general feeling among those who provide food. I think one thing that's important about what Putney offers as a complement to what, say, Foodworks and other Clothes and Fishes and Bridges Kitchen are offering, is that we are we're open every week. So being able to shop weekly is unique to Putney and contracted Foodworks for the general population. We also I think that the experience of shopping is slightly different in Putney and appeals to some people who find the complexity of need that is walking through the doors in Food Works. Difficult to be around, and so Putney's offering slightly different environment, particularly for families and seniors, and we see a lot of large families in Putney that come around. Yeah.
Not mind wrapping towards the end.
I am totally towards the
Thank
end
you.
here, yep. Yeah, so I think that's actually basically all I want to say. Yeah, I just wanted to urge people to support the recommendations of the Human Services Committee because I really do believe it's been a very positive. Thank you.
So much, Anna. I'm gonna actually pull a David Gartenstein and put a timer on, just to make this very town meeting like, if I can find my phone. Just because we have such great organizations to hear from, and I want to make sure that we have time for that and for also enough questions. Next up, would love to hear from Russell from Interaction. Russell, yeah, if you want to also stand, you can do that, or I'm gonna set a timer for 4 minutes. Is that okay?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. That's what I said. I said.
All right, give
4
us
minutes.
page
I'm
12.
sorry.
Yeah, because you don't mind, I think it's.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And actually, before I even get into this, Russell Bradbury Carlin Interaction, I should start with there. I just want to thank you all for putting this forum together. It feels like a really important thing to do. And I want to thank all of you for doing what you do. And if I calculate correctly, it's about 200 pages each. It's just the 6 of you that you have to dive in really deeply. And as a volunteer, that seems really a lot. So thank you for doing that. Yes, so I'm the executive director of Interaction. Interaction used to be called Youth Services. And the agency's over 50 years old. It actually started because of issues of juvenile delinquency going on in town, and that's what kind of got the whole agency formed. And we've been doing restorative justice programming over 40 years, and we started with a juvenile court diversion program. So restorative justice has been in the fiber of the agency for a long time. A whole set of youth programs, a whole set of restorative justice programs, and we have a behavioral health program. Everybody's staring at the Zoom screen.
Yeah, sorry.
You
one
turned
second.
the camera off.
I think,
I turn my camera off?
before you pulled out the,
Yeah, something came unplugged there.
Oh, I bet you came unplugged here.
trying to make sure that people can see.
It did.
I'm
out of here.
I'm not gonna make sure that we,
You need a gavel. You do have a gavel, right there is a gavel.
Yeah, pound it, Sarah.
So,
Actually, I think you should give him like 3 extra minutes.
cameras?
Are we back?
No,
No?
that's you. The red D is you.
Yeah, if you turn your camera on,
Camera on.
and if you turn off the blur background, we'll be able to see everything.
There we go. Okay.
It doesn't seem to want to turn on there. There we go.
Ah.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that setting. Go ahead, Russell.
Okay.
Sorry, got my 45 seconds.
Well, Russell, thank you very much. Okay, now.
Russell.
Yeah, so today we offer 20 different programs here in Brattleboro and Rutland County. Last year, we directly served over 500 residents among all the 3 departments that we have. For example, we helped youth transition out of foster care. We helped youth who are facing the impacts of the drug epidemic. We worked with adults who needed mental health support, but might not have been able to find it or afford it. And also our restorative justice programs have helped people. What they do is basically they help people who are first getting in contact with the criminal justice system and seeing if we can keep them from getting kind of pulled in. And we know once people are pulled into the criminal justice system, it's really hard to get out. So that's one of the main goals. And one thing I'll focus on just for a couple of seconds is our runaway and homeless youth work. We housed 14 Brattleboro youth in 2 of our programs, shelter programs, last year in FY24. And the key thing about working with young people around homelessness is that we're actually able to forestall chronic adult homelessness, which I think a lot of the issues that are coming up in town are, and that are being talked about around safety, are that population is included in there. So by getting young people, when they're first becoming homeless or close to it, getting them housed and out of that and not being repeatedly and coming back in and everything else happening, then they end up not being chronically homeless. That reduces the numbers in the long term.
Could you say again, how many youth are served in that?
In FY24, there were 14 Brattleboro youth who were served in 2 of our shelters. They were in our 2 programs at Harvard Shelter. So just broadly speaking about community safety, nonprofits like ours, along with the police department, along with first responders, are at the forefront of community safety. And let me speak a little bit to the restorative justice work, because that has been, it was the whole ordinance conversation, and restorative justice was included in there. And so I think it's really important for me to just kind of clarify the role of restorative justice. So restorative justice and the way we practice it and what we offer, it helps decrease costly interventions that happen further upstream, like court and incarceration. It creates repair and more safety. One of the things I often say to people kind of critical about, like, you know, what does restorative justice do, is that, you know, criminal justice, which is important, and I would never say like that shouldn't exist, but really what that does is that just focuses on the person who committed the crime. Restorative justice keeps high accountability for the people who committed the crime, but also really puts the focus on the people who are harmed, which the criminal justice system doesn't do, other than getting someone maybe off the street or away from that person, which is needed a lot of times. But it's inherently built in that we're working with both parties, and it's starting with the harmed party first. In addressing town safety, if Brattleboro wants to make use of non-punitive interventions for bad behavior, which is what was reported in the ordinance, like going through restorative justice programs or sending people to substance use or mental health counseling, it needs to fund those interventions. State and federal funding does not cover the cost of nonprofit human service work. That is why it's imperative that we receive funding from other sources, including the town, not just the town, but including the town. You know, as I said, for 50 years, we've been at the heart of the community. Everybody I meet in this town, either, maybe this is true for Groundworks and others, like either they work for youth services or interact, or they know someone, or their kids use the services. We've been here for a long time. You got the timer?
That is.
Including my 45 seconds? No. All right, I have 2 more sentences. We've been very adapted to the changes like the opioid crisis, housing shortages, and deepening poverty. While our work is making a difference, we're doing it on a shoestring budget. Funding is crucial to continue and maybe even hopefully someday expand our efforts where they're needed most.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Russell.
Thank you.
Next we've got John from SEPCA, who is up here on the Zoom. John, if it's okay, when you speak, I'm gonna pin you. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Here, it's all, okay.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm John Megas Russell from SEVCA. If you don't know who we are, we're Southeastern Vermont Community Action. We are located in Westminster. We have offices in Brattleboro, Windsor, White River Junction, among others. And we are a community action agency, and we have been working with Windham and Windsor County for 60 years now. So we're celebrating 60 years. One of a few of the programs that we run, if you're unfamiliar, we work on housing stability solutions. That helps a lot of people in Brattleboro. We work on utilities and fuel assistance, community resource navigation, as well as we're helping people start small businesses, get their taxes done, and even get personal and business financial coaching. All of these are free of charge for qualifying Vermonters. In addition, the last couple things we do, working on weatherization, emergency home repair. And up in Windsor County, we run some early education programs, which does not apply in Brattleboro. So over the course of the past 60 years, we've been helping people at the federal poverty line or up to about 175%. There are a lot of people in our town in Brattleboro, being a Brattleboro taxpayer resident, that need our support. In the past year, to give you some really great numbers, we helped 749 unduplicated individuals, 445 households in Brattleboro. I'm going to run through some big numbers. As a big number, let's look at just what y'all supported us with last year was $14,000. And the impact of the services we provided in Brattleboro were about $650,000. It's about 46 times more than what we are offered. We are pleased with whatever money we can be granted by the town. But to break it down a little bit, just to look at how we're keeping people housed and keeping them safe and keeping them warm, we spent about $108,000 in the past year to put fuel in tanks, to pay back rental programs, to get them first and last in security deposits. We also spent about $385,000 in impact in weatherization. So that's, sealing holes, making people safe, fixing things in their house, and then, of course, getting insulation in there. So, a couple other really fun things. Last year alone, we did about 104 people benefited from our tax services free of charge. And we're hoping in entirety for our tax program this year, we'll probably support 1,000 people across Windham and Windsor County. We hope that this year maybe we can support 1,000 Brattleboro residents. And as Emily Kornheiser framed up for me when I was up at Legislative Day a few weeks ago, is that West Brattleboro is one of the most needy communities in Vermont. And SEVCA is directly impacting these people by keeping them in their homes, by keeping them warm, and then also trying to keep them safe. But, you go down to Grove Street where we offer an office, people can get support for household items. They can get community resource navigation, help with applications for food assistance, 3 Squares. And so SEVCA is making a direct impact on people in this community in a really, really big way. And we're pleased to be doing that work. And if you ever need anything, I'm always available to talk. I'm always available via email. Josh Davis is our executive director. Wonderful people like Pat and Family Services. So we're a team. We love this community, and we'll leave the dollars on the side what we're asking for, but it's not much of an increase against the 14,000. And thanks for letting me talk and for serving Brattleboro residents.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, John.
All right. You may remove that pin, as will I. Next, can we hear from Elizabeth from Windham and Windsor Housing Trust? Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Bridgewater, the Executive Director of Windham and Windsor Housing Trust. I want to echo Russell's comment of gratitude just for the work that you're doing and the thoughtfulness that you put into deciding how to spend precious dollars. So the Windham and Windsor Housing Trust has been in the community for 38 years. And just to give like a quick broad overview of our programming, we kind of at our heart are really providing housing opportunities and creating new housing opportunities. In our history, we've created 887 rental homes, 42 mobile home lots, and 145 new shared equity homes that are throughout the community. 449 of those rental units are in Brattleboro, so that's almost half of our entire portfolio serving Windham and Windsor County. So it's kind of our heart and soul is here in Brattleboro. And as I was listening to other people and knowing who else is coming, I will say that we're really part of an ecosystem in Brattleboro, and so everything that we do is very much connected to everything that's being funded by the Human Services budget, because what we know is that Brattleboro renters in general, not just folks that are living in affordable housing, are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. And that means that they're in what's called a housing burden situation. Many, many people are spending more than 50% of their income in rent, which means they're in a severely housing burden situation. And so that remaining 70% or 50% of their family budget needs to be stretched pretty far. And that's where a lot of these services that the Human Services Committee is funding and the town is funding is helping with. One of the things that we started doing during the pandemic is working on housing retention directly. In the past, we've relied predominantly on a lot of partners, many of whom are in the room. But I think the need for housing retention grew so great during the pandemic that we needed to bring some of those services in-house. And that's what this funding has helped fund for the Housing Trust. And so we've done that in collaboration with all of the partners that are here tonight. Because when we help somebody access rental assistance, we often go to SEVCA. When we access food actually is a huge issue with folks in affordable housing that we serve. Food insecurity was one of the top 3 concerns in our recent survey for residents. So we know that food resources are really critical to our residents. When we have conflict and we need support, we work with Interaction. In fact, we just had 3 trainings with our staff, with our entire staff on restorative practices, so that when we show up with interactive staff, our staff is also trained in those practices, and we can show up in alignment with these practices. More recently, what we're realizing is we need another tool in the toolbox for housing retention, and that is for mediation. Living in community can be really challenging, and there's a lot of conflict that comes up that's not really a lease violation. It's just a personality conflict, and people really struggle with how to just get along. And sometimes it gets intractable, and we don't want we don't want to use the legal tool of eviction for every situation. And so having access to mediation services is really critical in those really recalcitrant situations where people just can't seem to get out of a challenging dynamic. And we need to bring in an expert mediator to just work through and help people loosen up the situation. So that's what our current grant is actually asking for, is to support around mediation services. And we consider that a key housing retention practice. So I'll just close by saying housing retention is a big part of what we do. We do it in collaboration with a lot of folks that are being served. I think for us as housing providers, if these services were to go, if this funding were to go away, we would see a dramatic impact on the folks that we provide housing to. So I would just urge folks to support all of the recommendations of the Human Services Committee, and as you consider how to spend town resources this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. All right. I'm going to remind folks that if you have questions, to either email. We have 2 or 3 more folks to hear from. You can email Brattleboro HSC, standing for Human Services Committee, at gmail.com. Or we have index cards right here if people have questions. Vicki from the Women's Freedom Center, and I'm going to pin you on my computer, and maybe perhaps you can pin her on that computer as well.
Great.
Oh.
Thank you. So I'm Vicki Sterling, and I'm the director of the Women's Freedom Center. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about the work of the center, which has been providing support to domestic and sexual violence survivors in our community for 50 years. And what we know is that domestic and sexual violence doesn't discriminate. It affects individuals of all ages and backgrounds and walks of life. 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men have experienced violence from an intimate partner at some point in their lives. And 1 in 5 women have been sexually assaulted. Last year, we worked with 305 unduplicated Brattleboro residents, and we sheltered 55 individuals from Brattleboro who were experiencing domestic and sexual violence. So with the funding we receive from the town, we provide the resources and the support survivors need to really break free from the violence. We staff a 24-hour hotline that's available every single day of the year. When someone's in crisis, whether it's the middle of the night, a weekend, or holiday, they can call and be connected immediately with an advocate. And that hotline is often the first step for survivors seeking safety. We also provide an emergency shelter for individuals and families who would otherwise be trapped in abusive relationships. And it's more than just a roof over their heads. It's a refuge where they really begin to heal, connect, and start over. We offer critical legal advocacy, emotional support, emergency financial assistance, housing assistance, and case management services to help survivors navigate all the complex systems they face. We provide in-person support to survivors of sexual assault when they seek medical treatment at the emergency room, no matter the day or time. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, it makes an enormous difference to have that kind of support during one of the most difficult times in someone's life. And then one last, I think, really important aspect of our work is our commitment to prevention. We provide education on healthy relationships in schools and workplaces, helping young people and adults alike to understand the importance of respect, boundaries and consent. And by starting these conversations early, we hope to prevent violence before it starts. So we know that budgets are tight and supporting these essential services comes at a cost. But if these critical services aren't available to those who need them, survivors are going to be left without the support they need to escape. And the ripple effects will be far-reaching, impacting families, children, and we believe the overall health of our community. So we really believe and encourage the town to support the Freedom Center and all the other very important organizations. And by doing so, the town, we feel, is investing in a safer, stronger community. And it's not about just offering a helping hand to those in need, but it's also a commitment to standing together against violence and fostering a town where safety and compassion and justice are at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna read some remarks from Susan Dabrowski, who coordinates the Child Nutrition Program for Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union School District. And this is specifically related to the summer food program, which provides food to kids in the summer when they're not in school. My name is Susan Dabrowski. Her name is Susan Grabowski, and I coordinate the Child Nutrition Program for Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union. Today, I want to highlight the critical role that Brattleboro's Human Services funding has played in supporting the Summer Food Service Program, why it's vital that this funding continues. Every summer when school is out, hundreds of children in our community lose access to the meals they rely on during the school year. The Summer Food Service Program, SFSP, helps bridge that gap, ensuring that no child in Brattleboro has to go hungry just because school is not in session. Last year alone, we operated 10 meal sites and served nearly 10,000 meals, reaching hundreds of Brattleboro children at open, non-congregate meal sites. Brattleboro has one of the highest eligibility rates for free and reduced price meals in the state. This means that a significant portion of our families struggle to afford enough food for their children. While federal reimbursements help cover some meal costs, there's a significant funding gap for essential operational expenses like delivery, staff training, client monitoring, and coordination. The funding we receive is a key part of making this program possible, ensuring that every child who needs meal can get one, no questions asked. I think it's also important to note that because federal funding sources are currently being highly scrutinized at this time, along with the threat of increasing the community eligibility provision qualification 60% free and reduced, we may be faced with much less federal assistance for our school nutrition program overall, not just during the summer. This is an extraordinarily tenuous time. We know that access to nutritious food is fundamental to a child's health, development, and ability to learn. When kids have enough to eat, they thrive. When they don't, they struggle, not just physically, but academically and socially. Their summer food service program is not just about food, it's about giving every child in Brattleboro a fair chance to succeed. As the town debates whether to continue funding human services, I urge you to consider the direct impact this support has had on our community's most vulnerable children. This is an investment in health, equity, and opportunity. Without it, we risk leaving too many families without a safety net. Appreciate your time and consideration. Last but not least, Groundworks. you all are willing to do so.
Does last minute, eh?
Yay.
I just happen to have some,
If you're willing,
I'll be willing to speak.
only 4 minutes though.
Okay. I don't have my glasses, so bear with me. So I'm Becky Best. I'm the Director of Development and Communications. On behalf of Groundworks Collaborative, we would like to thank the Human Services Committee and express our sincere gratitude for you taking the time to review ours and all these wonderful organizations' applications. Groundworks has a clear mission. It's to end hunger and homelessness in our region. We provide food, shelter, and supportive services to members of our community. The work we do would be impossible without the strong network of partnerships that we've developed here in Brattleboro. We collaborate with over half of the organizations that are requesting funding this year, and these relationships are really the foundation of a robust safety net that ensures comprehensive care for our neighbors when they need it most. Last year alone, Groundworks served over 3,600 Brattleboro residents. That's approximately 1 in 4 people in our town who relied on us for basic human needs. Our FoodWorks program provided groceries for over 3,300 individuals through more than 12,000 shopping visits for Brattleboro families, including 877 children in Brattleboro. Our current data already shows an uptick trend occurring in 2025, as we saw in January. 1,896 individuals visited for shopping compared to last year at 1,175, showing that more people are in fact needing our services. Our case management team works intensively with 338 Brattleboro households currently experiencing housing instability, successfully also helping 31 Brattleboro residents last year transition out of homelessness into stable housing. As you know, our community is facing unprecedented challenges. With dramatic cuts to the state's General Assistance Hotel Program, our overnight shelter waitlist has at times increased by 42%. Many people with chronic medical conditions are now utilizing our shelter beds or living still unsheltered on our streets. The need for our services, food access, supportive housing, and case management has never been greater. The town's investment will directly support 3 critical services. Our food shelf program, FoodWorks, serving thousands of Brattleboro residents, our housing case management program, helping people navigate the complex path from homelessness to housing stability, and our permanent supporting housing program that provides ongoing supports at the Chalet and Great River Terrace, where 52 formerly homeless Brattleboro residents now have stable permanent housing with signed leases and the ongoing support from Groundworks staff they need to maintain this housing long-term. Why is the town's partnership and funding so essential? The town simply doesn't have the infrastructure to directly address these urgent needs. While the town can support zoning and policy changes, it's organizations like Groundworks and our partners at Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust that actually develop and maintain affordable housing units and provide intensive case management that many of our residents need while living there. While Groundworks does receive funding from federal and state sources, foundations, and individual donors, the town of Brattleboro's investment in these critical human services makes a profound statement about our actual community values. We are 75% federally and state funded. So with the 25% of our annual budget still left to raise, in order to provide all of our critical programs and services, we build our budget brick by brick. And we look at the town for a contribution to support a piece of this foundation and the work. The town's allocation to Groundworks delivers multiple benefits. It helps prevent homelessness through timely intervention. It provides essential food security to thousands of residents and supports maintaining stable housing for those who have already recently experienced homelessness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
I feel really proud of our town. I just have to say that. And I feel really proud that all of you all do so much incredible work for this organization, for this community, and hope that we can continue to fund this work. So we have a couple of questions. The first question is, why did the Red Cross funding get so small? Natural disasters seem to be increasing. And I love this question because it actually helps give insight into our process. So thank you for asking it. Avery, did you have you laughed as though you had an answer.
Oh, just because I know I talked about that a lot.
Okay.
That was kind of an
Do you want to
inside
answer the
laugh.
question?
I could if you want me
Go
to,
for
but
it.
if you want to, that's,
No, go for it.
I mean, I didn't prepare for this question.
That's okay. No one prepared for this question.
Oh, okay.
It's a real question.
Yeah. This, I just also just have so much respect for everyone here and reading. I've read all the applications. It's my 5th year on the committee, so very nerdy. And like, it's really amazing to see the ecosystem that we have here. And the Red Cross is obviously a really important organization. But I think we're also hearing a lot of feedback about like fiscal responsibility, things like that. So I find myself like saying things like that, even though people would assume I was a very liberal person, like a Trump sticker. But you know, in general, when you look at their budget and you look at where their representation is, one of the things we talked on a higher level of what we look at in the application questions, but we also have some really granular details that we find in the applications. And some of them are like, we ask for your board lists. Those who've done the application know this. And we ask for things like that. So we know where key staff, where board members live. We know where representation is. We know, you know, where service is being provided. And so while the Red Cross has definitely provided really important, really intensive services in our town, some years they have 0, some years they have 5, but it's really important. They're not here in the same presence, in the same way that almost all of the other organizations were. And they also have a lot larger endowment, larger access to funds. They just didn't demonstrate as much of a need for funds day over day as most organizations that have the funding. So that, you know, it's not about the importance. It's never about that. It's hard, but we really do care about making sure we're balancing, you know, we're all taxpayers too. So we are care about it. Yeah, I wonder, we don't know who asked that question. Oh, you asked that question. Yeah. Does that, I mean, I can elaborate.
Yeah,
more,
no,
so-
that's great. I do appreciate it and the connection to the process.
Yeah, we also do this is not a nerd thing. We do a cost analysis of like, and you can't compare services like a night of housing versus like a visit to something. It's not the same. But if you look at number of services to the amount of money asked, and we can do like a cost per service a little bit. And so their number was actually really high. And, you know, it's good service, but it's like when you're looking at, you know, like the Women's Freedom Center, for example, was like $10 per person served, which is
Yeah.
actually very small, you know.
But they're more likely to serve like someone's house burned down.
True.
So the cost of serving that is much higher.
Yeah, but I think for the amount they're asking, it was like something like in the hundreds. I think it's 400 something, maybe. And so we're looking at like things like that in just little details.
Thank you.
And again, I think the important part of what we're also looking at is the money that this town is providing crucial to the operation of this organization, right? For the Red Cross, which is a subsidiary of a national, international organization, the answer is not necessarily. The amount of money that Brattleboro is giving is not going to make or break whether or not the organization is able to provide services in our town specifically.
And
Yes.
in the interest of nerdery, I have the spreadsheet up. I looked really quick. It's Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. It would have been $10.64. So it was not the princess. I knew it was a speaker. I apologize.
One of the questions that has been asked many times on the notorious Brattleboro Facebook group is and actually the finance committee, the town finance committee did some research into this, is how does Brattleboro compare to other towns around how much we give to organizations for human services? And I was hoping that maybe Trevor, I know that you did some research on this.
I did some research, yeah. Yes, on, you know, first pass, like we spend a little more than most other towns on human services, which personally I'm proud of. But as was mentioned before, like a lot of other towns have like a housing board, which might include a housing trust, you know, and that's something we rely on Wyndham Windsor for, and as well as Groundworks. You know, so there's a lot of those services. There's also things around like racial equity, say. We have a lot of wonderful organizations who work in that department, the Root, Susu, you know, and then, you know, even some towns have like a community justice department or something. We're relying on Interaction. On like the size of our town, we don't have like the ability to directly provide a lot of those services. So, you know, just like when I see that we're serving, like giving money to 52 different organizations with the small budget we have. And then just like looking like at Keene really quickly, and like they, have a very different ecosystem in New Hampshire, but there was discussions there about how they were looking at having to spend up to $900,000 on housing alone. That includes shelter services as well as rental assistance. So, I mean, that's double what we're spending on all of the organizations that we're looking at tonight. Yeah, and then even it's possible also to find, like by one estimate, Putney is spending nearly 2.5% of its taxes. So our 2% is not astronomically high in comparison even. Yeah, also, a lot of other towns are very close to larger centers like Burlington and Chittenden County have a lot more resources. We're kind of out on our own here for people who maybe don't want to cross into like other states or it's hard. We also know that like the vast majority of the people being served are like from this area. It's not just people coming in from other places. Yeah. Again, I don't think it's astronomically higher than other towns, and I think the value we're getting for what we're spending on the town level is astronomically amazing. So thank you all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's important about the finance committee's breakdown is it's a little bit apples and oranges, right? We're comparing towns that actually have really different resources and really different needs. And so if you look at the category of human services and what we consider to be the category of human services versus what another town might consider human services and what is in-house versus that they're sort of asking an organization, a nonprofit organization to hold for that town. It's hard to compare actually. And so I think that's an important point for all of us to continue to keep talking about among our fellow residents as we come into the next couple of weeks of decision making in this town.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to add that many of these towns are having very similar discussions we're having here in terms of community safety and stuff. And really like we're all dealing with the same issue. No one has found a cure-all solution. So we're all looking. So, looking around us at like what's going on today isn't really going to necessarily tell us like what we need to be doing going forward also. So.
Yeah.
I found a town report from Putney, 1955, which was, that was, the American dream was kind of really cranking then, and they were spending 2% of their budget on human services.
Wow.
That's amazing. How much was 2% of their budget?
Wasn't much. It's a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
So just looking, are there any other questions? How many other questions online or any questions on Zoom?
Nothing in the email?
Shockingly quiet, given the amount of activity. So a couple of, I imagine that most of the folks here have an understanding of the decision points that are coming up in the town, and I just want to name a couple of them. The first one is next Tuesday, we have an election in this town, a municipal election for select board, town meeting members, and then there are a number of articles also on the ballot. I would say select board, town meeting members, and the last article, Article 6, I want to say, relates specifically to our funding. So this eventually will go to RTM. And so who is actually present and able to vote at RTM is really, really important. So I encourage, we usually don't have contested elections for town meeting representatives here in this town, but this year we do. And so I encourage everyone to really do your research and get a sense of who you think is going to vote for human services funding, if that's something that you think we should continue. And then there is this article at the bottom of the ballot on the back side. I actually just voted because I'm going to be out of town. My absentee ballot's in my backpack, which asks people to weigh in. It's sort of an advisory article about how much the human services budget should be. And we really encourage everyone to vote at least for maintaining the current level. One of the reasons for maintaining the current level, at least for this year, is that if we don't maintain the current level, the whole process that we just did gets thrown out the window and we have to figure out how to make changes to it kind of in a fast way. And also, actually, all of us are up for reappointment to the Human Services Committee, so there might even be a completely different Human Services Committee by the time that we have to make that decision. So, for the sake of the process and also for the sake of maintaining funding, we really encourage folks to vote along those lines. And then RTM itself will be the place where this proposal that the committee has come up with will be approved or not approved. And the new funding level will be decided for the coming year. Any other thoughts or requests from the committee?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything. And
Gratitude, which we've expressed a lot. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just really want to thank everybody in the committee for all that we've done this year, and for pulling this program together. But I want to thank all of you for all that you do for the town. And, you know, I think that one thing that I certainly have learned over the years is the amount of effort that you people put in to help our fellow residents. And in many cases, the fellow residents that you're helping may in fact be families and friends that we don't know anything about. And so, you know, what you are all doing is extremely important. But I think, you know, what we've seen is the increase in funding is happening in line with an increase in the needs that we're seeing in town. And that's reality. And so, you know, the assistance provided by all the organizations is extremely important, and for which we thank you.
Keep talking about this stuff, please. Yeah. I know you do. But please more. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Did it 4 minutes early.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so you're gonna stop the recording? Or should I push? I can push.
The stop button, you can,
Hopefully that's.
there's a.
There it is. He has to.